Good morning, David. Hey, we're both up
Morning.
bright and early. Yeah, yeah,
Indeed, indeed. Thanks for having
yeah.
me.
That's okay. I was so interested I've always been interested in your work ever since we met in person when we both gave a talk at Postcards from Midwife event for the Balance app,
Was it?
because
Yeah.
we're both ambassadors for the Balance app. And I thought your talk was fantastic. And I meant to get together with you to talk through sleep, which you know everything about. And so now we finally got each other together. But before I go any further, David, could you tell the audience just a little bit about yourself, please?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So I'm David. I'm a medical doctor. So I am also director of the Better Sleep Clinic. So my work in sleep really started several years ago. So I used to be a lung doctor, a respiratory doctor within the NHS, and actually most sleep disorders get managed by the respiratory team because a lot of the problems that you get with sleep are due to how you breathe during sleep. So they come with the respiratory team. And I found it an absolutely fascinating place to work. So I work within NHS sleep clinics. I've actually moved out from hospital and now work in general practice and have started the Better Sleep Clinic. So we see a range of different sleep disorders. We work with things like insomnia, obstructive sleep apnea, some circadian rhythm disorders. So we work one to one with individuals, but we also work with organizations and a lot of high performance sport. So sleep is a really big part of how we show up during the day. And so we work with the Olympic team, we work with Premiership football, Formula One, really all about sleep's role in performance and recovery. And we really see how this fits in a lot with with other areas of health and well-being, things like exercise and nutrition. So it's great to actually, as you say, catch up and be able to have this conversation about that interaction between sleep and nutrition.
Yes, amazing, absolutely amazing. Well, thank you very much for your time. So I know you're super busy, and you've just made it come to life there with you have lots of areas that you're working on, and I had not realized that you used to focus on being that like respiratory health when you were working full time in the NHS. Wow. Okay. So that, and it does tie in, well, certainly with sleep apnea, but yeah. Um, that's so
Absolutely.
interesting to know. Thank you for sharing all that. Now I know more about you actually, and it's great. It's great. And what brought us together, interestingly enough, just for this blog was all about the fact that I was talking about the health benefits of coffee, whether it's decaf actually or caffeinated. So I was talking more about the polyphenols in it. But you got in touch and you said, well, in fact, we also as a sleep clinic promote coffee. And in fact, so much so we decided to stock a really great quality coffee on our website just to bring home that message. I think that's what you said. Could you we're jumping straight in here about coffee, and then we'll pull out again a little bit about sleep. But let's jump in about why did a sleep clinic sell coffee? Yeah.
Yeah, it seems to be ridiculous, doesn't it, that a sleep clinic is producing its own coffee. So we brought out Sunrise a couple of weeks ago, but there's a few reasons really. Number one is that sleep makes a huge impact on your physical and your mental health. It's really important part of well-being. But if you look online to try and improve your sleep, it's really difficult to find things that are evidence-based. That you find a lot of hacks and trends and quick fixes that don't really work. And so what
Mm,
we wanted people to do was perhaps think a bit more critically about what they hear about sleep. And we thought coffee would be a really good place to start because coffee is often seen as this enemy of sleep, which isn't really fair. Um, in a very basic way, we would say that both sleep and coffee promote wakefulness. So in that really basic way, they're actually on the same side.
okay.
But it is more than that. And certainly with a lot of our insomnia patients, when your sleep isn't working as you would like it to be, people often start trying to fix sleep. They try and make it better, and they will do things like they will stop socializing in the evening, they will cut out the gym, they'll cut out sport, they might cut out work, and they nearly always cut out coffee, with
Mm,
coffee often being that really central part of that rich culture of life. And what this means is that you cut out and you cut out, and your world shrinks and shrinks and shrinks until all you've got left is actually your insomnia, and you have
right.
nothing else to think about. And
Right.
everybody knows that the more you think about sleep, the less likely it is to happen. And so, actually,
Yes.
getting started with coffee and bringing this back in, it starts to re-expand your world and loosen that very kind of fixed grip that you can have on sleep, which is often this big driver of insomnia. So we thought coffee all these other health benefits that you get from coffee. But certainly from a sleep perspective, it can actually build that flexibility, which can make you sleep better.
Right. Gosh, thank you very much. And that's, I can get that. I get that if people over focus on sleep, which naturally they would if they're not getting enough. And then going down a rabbit hole. I think you have a
Absolutely, it
phrase for
is.
it,
Yeah.
which I really liked. You talked about, is it sleep? What was your phrase you had when we were talking
So
earlier?
it gets called sleep effort. So
That's
sleep
it.
effort
Yeah.
is trying hard to sleep, but it's very insidious the way that sleep effort can get established in your life. So it's not just getting into bed and going trying to sleep. It's interesting, often in the form of well-meant advice for sleeping better. So sleep hygiene, if you're familiar with that concept. So sleep hygiene is probably the chief offender.
Yeah.
That sleep hygiene gets presented to people and it gets interpreted as rules, and people follow these rules very exactly. And what this does is it gathers a lot of expectation and anticipation about sleep, and with that, a lot of stress and worry and anxiety. And this stress and worry stops you from sleeping. So you have to be slightly cautious about how you approach things like sleep hygiene. But sleep effort is this very subtle trap that you can end up in when you're not sleeping well.
Right, right. Okay. And I kind of get that. I think sleep effort is a better phrase than sleep hygiene because that word effort, you totally can get that person who's been trying everything, just trying everything, trying everything. And here's somebody else with another suggestion. Oh, just try this. And then they try it. And that's that, that's that rabbit hole where
Absolutely.
they
Yeah.
come to your clinic and they go, I've tried everything. I expect that's words you hear all the time. Yeah,
And all the time. And that is actually often the problem, that people
yeah,
are ever so meticulous and they're putting in so much effort to fix their sleep that's the reason why this is all perpetuating. I'm also really pleased that you picked up on that term sleep hygiene because it's such an awful term.
yeah, it
I
is.
feel there should be a campaign started to rename it because
Yeah,
what does it mean?
yeah,
That's the problem. It's the most opaque term ever. So
yeah,
sleep effort, that
yeah,
carries a bit of feeling and a bit of meaning with it, but no, sleep
yeah.
hygiene is a particular bugbear of mine.
Yes, I actually agree with you. I've always thought it is made up by a well-meaning scientist who perhaps has a good night's sleep and
Yeah.
yeah, not really kind of got into it. Um, I know I don't want you to give away your secrets in a sense, but could you tell us what a person might expect if they are coming to your clinic and they have insomnia, they've tried all the tricks and tips, and what is it you kind of do? What part, it's not, I know it's not voodoo and it's very much based on science. Could you just give us a little bit of an understanding?
Absolutely, yeah. So our approach to insomnia is based primarily in something called cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia, or CBTI. So this is a
Okay.
way of looking at how your thoughts and your actions influence the quality and the quantity of the sleep that you get. So it's very good. It's very effective treatment. It's the gold standard, and recommended as first line by the NHS, the British Sleep Society, the American Academy of Sleep Medicine. So it's very robust treatment. And what would happen, what a patient would experience is, first of all, we would listen to what they have to say. We would listen to their story. So what we know about healthcare in general, but particularly with sleep, is that everybody's very different. And the reasons people don't sleep are very different. And so we really want to drill down and really understand what's going on with that person and with that person's sleep. And it's only really when you've got that handle on the situation that you can make a bit of a plan. So
Yeah.
interesting point about CBT for insomnia is it's not one thing. It's a collection of different
Right.
treatments that we put together a plan. And the only
Ah,
way that you can put that together really for someone is by properly hearing them out and listening to their story. And then we make a plan. And the
yeah.
plans, they take different amount of time. So some clinics you'll go to and they'll say you need everyone has 6 appointments, but that we know that doesn't really reflect the reality that people are at different positions with their sleep issue. And
Mm,
so there's usually a range somewhere between 2, maybe 4 appointments. So it's not a lot. And it's a treatment where people get better as a general rule. So it's a really
yeah.
satisfying place to work. From
Yeah.
my own personal perspective, it's always
I like
numerous times
that.
as well. It's so lovely to see people get better. And
Yeah.
so it's great to be part of someone's journey. And we're all online, so we talk through conversation as what we're having now, really.
Just like this. Absolutely. That's great. That's great. I like that. Gosh, I really like the encouragement there. Literally, it's worth it, and usually people get better. Now we are in my kitchen and we're having a chat this morning, and I'm actually. Do you mind if I make a coffee? I just kind of
I
thought,
would be offended
you
if you
know,
didn't.
we were just going to, and for me, coffee is a ritual. It's although I don't do the caffeine very well, it's this action in the morning for me, and it kind of weirdly wakes me up with its bitterness. Now, I mean, there's a tiny bit of caffeine left in it, but it's more about the bitterness. And so I generally have this alongside my breakfast, and yeah, it's great. I just even the smell for me is the smell of the morning. It's weird. So I don't know. I think this comes back to your with sunrise. Is that the name of the coffee that you have on?
Sunrise, yes,
Yeah,
yeah,
it's sunrise.
exactly, yeah, yeah,
Lovely name. Love that. That's so
yeah.
clever. So I think that's that. It for me, it evokes just that the morning, the sunrise, that smell of coffee, and then the bitter taste. I love the bitter taste. But
Yes.
yeah. So it's there you go. That's
Oh,
my
oh,
coffee.
oh, well,
I like
cheers.
espresso. Yeah, cheers. I
I
like
do, yeah.
espresso.
That's
It's funny,
yeah.
isn't
No,
it?
I mean, I would love to. So we, what do we have home? We usually use a cafetiere, the French press style thing, which is decent. It's decent, but
Yeah.
I'd love an espresso maker. But I think it's also quite nice to keep it as that kind of special treat when you go out. I'd never want coffee to feel like a busman's holiday. I'd
Oh my
always like to
gosh,
have that kind of novelty
absolutely.
value. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
But no, I absolutely agree
absolutely.
with all of that about the kind of the ritual of coffee, and we find that so coffee is definitely more than just caffeine. It is that kind of cultural centerpiece, and people really love going out for coffee, and that's why it can be so tragic when that gets thrown out the window. It's very much throwing the baby out with the bathwater from a
Yeah.
sleep perspective. That you perhaps don't want to have coffee right before bed if you're struggling a little bit, but certainly coffee in the morning is very unlikely to make any difference to your sleep at night. But it is that kind of symbol of normality and symbol of real life, which I think is important to retain if your sleep is
Yes.
going a
Yeah.
little bit shaky at the time. Mm.
Yes. There we go. Lovely. I love that. Some rituals do help. Some, especially, I should imagine some morning rituals. I think that for me, exactly, it's that one of those ones, a symbolism of the morning and a wake up
Yeah.
time and things like that. That's great. David, I have to ask this because I'm always so interested. Being being a foodie and a nutritionist, do you find in your clinic work, is there anything nutritionally that a person can do to help their sleep? Or what do you find? What do you find connected around food that helps?
So sleep can be quite a good kind of barometer of what's going on in the rest of your life. And so anything that's impacting other aspects of your health can be reflected in your sleep. And so nutrition is certainly relevant here. And we'd always say that people should focus on a healthy diet, a healthy rounded diet. And certainly our view of health is holistic. And what's interesting about sleep is that, funnily enough, people don't actually care about sleep as a general rule. They don't care about sleep. What they care about is what sleep supports during the day. So it's that daytime function,
Right.
mood, concentration, energy. But once you look at daytime function, you're suddenly in a very multifactorial sphere. And nutrition is very relevant, and exercise is very, very relevant, and things like that. So we would always say that what you're actually after is that daytime well-being, then you should address your nutrition as well.
Yeah.
In terms of how nutrition can directly affect sleep, it's probably more about the timings of when you eat. So
Okay.
there's quite a lot written online about the importance of not eating right before bed.
Yes.
And you can get even just the digestive process can wake you, perhaps not wake you, but can pull you to shallower states of sleep, which are
Mm,
less restful. So that's
mm.
relevant. You can also get heartburn. I get heartburn, so I definitely try and eat a little bit early because that could disrupt sleep. But you
Okay.
also don't want to swing the pendulum too far the other way and go to bed distractedly hungry. And it's
Yeah.
something to bear in mind with certain regimes, perhaps, where you do intermittent fasting. So if you have a very
Hmm.
early evening meal, if it's very early, we did have a patient who was waking up at a particular time in the early morning, and it was very consistent, and it did seem that that was probably a dip in blood sugar that was
Okay.
causing a little bit of discomfort, and then just a natural arousal from sleep.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
it's worth kind of bearing that in mind. But it's probably more about timings, I think, for
Okay.
most people.
Yes. Okay. That is actually very helpful. And it does make sense. I do understand with my clinic work that if someone eats too close to bed, that does seem to disturb the quality of their sleep. So I get that. I mean, obviously alcohol does as well, but and that
Yeah.
varies, I should imagine, with the individual. I'm sure you go into this with your patients. So yeah, it's very, very interesting. I think just generally a well-rounded normal evening meal would be fine. I can't think myself either. And there's no nuances I think with the meal that will particularly help. And once again, it's up to the individual to find what's best for them. Exactly.
Yes, absolutely, yeah, and we always
Yeah.
encourage that approach, as you say, that we should always view ourselves as individuals when we're looking at advice online, and always a
Yes.
little cautious of advice that's very generic, because
Yes.
it doesn't take into that appreciation, that rich diversity that we have, as people.
Oh, absolutely. Exactly. That's right. And I think it's hard. So for some people, for especially say doctors and nurses, have to sometimes do some very unusual hours at work. And I think that how does a person, if they are having shift work and they don't have too much control over that, especially in the medical profession, what's the best way for them to kind of get back into a sleep pattern, or is there a best way? I'm just interested because I'm sure there are some doctors and nurses listening to this or other people in shift work.
Yeah. So what we always say is that there's always something that you can do. So there is, and this is a good reflection of life in general, that there are things that you can control, and there's things that you probably can't. And
Right.
so shift work's a really good example, that you probably can't control the hours of your shift unless you leave your job. So that's relatively fixed. But there are things that you can do. And this is fundamentally important because it shows that change is possible. And if you talk to people who work shifts, they will tell you a story that they'll say, sometimes I sleep well and my shift goes better, and sometimes I sleep less well and my shift is more difficult. And
Yeah.
so, but what makes that difference? What causes you to
Yeah.
sleep well sometimes and not on others? And these are usually things that are under our control. So it's about trying to identify what these factors are and doing something about it. And some of that is actually about the opportunity for sleep. So
Right.
making sure that if you're finishing your shift, if it's a night shift, say, that you are trying to maximize your time in bed, because often people are actually sleeping okay, but it's about trying to juggle all these other things in life that means that you sleep less well. So, and it's sometimes there's really low hanging fruit here. So things like, getting someone to walk the dog or pick the
Yes.
kids up from school, or,
Yes.
not having a delivery driver booked in that day, something on the door saying I'm on nights, would you
Yeah.
mind not ringing the doorbell?
Yeah.
These things, they seem a little bit simple, but sometimes it's the simple things that actually make the biggest difference.
Yeah. Okay. I get that. Yes. Well, great. Absolutely. And and people need that pointing out. Yeah. That makes sense to me. Absolutely. Brilliant. Now, have you got any stories to share, or just a story? I was so interested when you talked about sports performance. Have you got any story from that you can share, or yeah, anything in particular that sticks in your mind as being quite an interesting outcome?
Yeah, so I can. So we work a lot with we work with a few Premiership football teams, and so when you work in elite sport, the top level of sport, um, there is a kind of personality there,
Yeah,
and it really it is the secret to someone's success, that they can be so focused and so committed, and so dedicated. Like, this is what the kind of champion mindset is. But it can come with certain vulnerabilities, and I think a vulnerability to insomnia and trouble with sleeping is one that I think a lot at that level do experience. And what can make the situation slightly worse? So I don't know if you follow football, but they tend to have a lot of evening games because you want to play at a time that matches sort of prime time viewing.
yeah,
And it can be quite difficult to try and sleep after you've had an evening game. But you
yeah,
take your role so seriously that you naturally analyze and play over in your head your performance and several other things. When your mind is going at 100 miles an hour, it can be quite difficult to sleep.
yeah,
And why I always like this example is because our view is that high performance isn't owned by elite sport. It's clearly important in elite sport, but actually this I need to perform is actually something that we find across society. So, if you run your own business, if you're, a workplace leader, if you're a single parent, we're all showing up and trying to perform.
Yeah.
And this kind of idea of having things running through your head and not being able to sleep is something that we all of us find from time to time. And so trying to make a strategy for dealing with that, I think, is really important, actually quite effective. And what we find is when these thoughts are kind of popping up in our mind, there's usually a reason. It's usually because it's important. And so rather than trying to block it, which is what it's tempting to try and do, a really good approach is actually to lean into it, to lean
Okay.
into those thoughts, give them what they want, give them that thought, but do it in a slightly structured way. And so
Okay.
one approach is called constructive worry. So rather than having just kind of going on this kind of perpetual feeling of worry, sit down with a piece of paper, write down what your worries are. Write them down. And I always encourage people to write things down, which doesn't feel very kind of 2025, nearly 2026, but when thoughts are in our head, they have this habit of being a little bit vague and a little bit formless. Once you've
Mm.
written it down, it's defined. When it's defined, you can think about it more constructively. So get things down on paper. Spend 20 or 30 minutes really thinking about them. And then the big thing to do is at the end of that exercise is to write down a time the following day, once you're up, once you've had a shower, once you've had a coffee, perhaps, when you're
Yep.
next going to think about these thoughts. And then you can
Right.
symbolically shut the book.
Yeah.
And this is a
Yeah.
really powerful way of not ignoring thoughts, but acknowledging them. And you're not
Yeah.
blocking them, but you're just compartmentalizing them and sweeping them to earlier in the day. So your mind is less burdened at night. So when the
Yeah.
thoughts do pop up when you're trying to sleep, you can think, it is important, this thought, I will think about it, but not now when I'm trying to sleep. And it's a really powerful
Amazing.
way of actually just clearing your mind.
Wow.
So
David,
yeah, I was thinking that's a good
this
example
is
because it's so applicable to real life
so
as well.
good. Yes. And also to many of the women I see in clinic who perhaps are in perimenopause or early postmenopause, perhaps they have hot flushes that are waking them up. But to go back to sleep, then their minds might start racing or worrying, or there might be anxiety. But
Yes,
that
absolutely.
tool that would be really useful for them as well. So,
Yeah,
David, this whole conversation has been absolute gold. Thank you. It's brilliant. Thank you
that's
so
it.
much. I mean,
Pleasure.
when we worked together, with the Balance app, and when I met you in person and heard your talk, I knew that your knowledge is immense in this area and goes deep, and it's really good. But this has just really helped, I'm sure, everybody who's listening to really feel confident about sorting out their sleep and going to your clinic if they need to, and just, yeah, it's that desperation does can end. Yeah. Yeah.
Yes, yeah, it does.
Brilliant.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
change is possible. That's what we always want people to know is that
Yeah.
your sleep doesn't have to stay this way. It can be better.
Yeah. Yeah, brilliant. Okay, thank you so much for coming
Thank you for having
here,
me.
into our virtual rooms on a
Yeah,
busy
yeah,
morning. And yeah, brilliant. Okay, and have a great day.
yeah. And here, enjoy your coffee.
Yeah, thank you.
Cheers, man.